Okay, quick disclaimer before we get started. The Blockmates podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only and does not constitute financial advice. The information and opinions expressed on the podcast are those of the host and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of Blockmates or its affiliates. Listeners are encouraged to do their own research and consult with a financial advisor before making any investment decisions. Blockmates and its affiliates are not liable for any losses or damages incurred as a result of the reliance on the information or opinions expressed on this podcast.
We're back. Hello, everyone. Hey, Simon. We've got Simon from Spool. He's decided to take some time out of his busy day to come and see us. Spool, in very simple terms, allows you to set up vaults and set up strategies, obviously within DeFi. Introduction, please, Simon, who you are and what you do. Thanks for joining us.
We're really happy to be here. And I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at Spool, and I'm mainly responsible for the business development side. But, it goes both ways, right? We try to make partners happy. We try to partner with as many projects as possible. But also we try to understand what the market wants, what partners, clients, users need, and feed that back really to our devs so that we are not building in a vacuum, building in isolation. And that's the main thing I'm responsible for at Spool, really.
And you also have a very intimate knowledge of the product because, as we know, if you don't know your product, you can't sell it. And, obviously you guys, you spoke about, doing partnerships, getting those relationships going. So explain to us, what Spool is in light of, the kind of partnerships that you're obviously cultivating and building.
No, really happy to do so. So Spool is really a massive toolbox that allows you a lot of freedom to build highly composable smart vaults. So a smart vault for us is a vault that has features that allow it to self-execute in many ways. So if you set up a vault with Spool, you are able to pick basically a risk model that tells you how risky individual strategies are, that has calculations for each of those. Then you pick those strategies, and then you see obviously immediately how risky your overall portfolio is in this vault, your overall exposure, where funds would be going if you deposit, and you can set your risk appetite. So are you risk neutral? Are you more risk seeking? Are you more risk averse? If you want to have exposure to high risk strategies, but still want to be risk averse, obviously you would have lower allocation to those. And why is it smart? Really because every single day, these funds are reallocated within Spool vaults. So if risk changes or if yield changes around strategies and risk stays the same, allocation shifts automatically. So it's basically fully automated portfolio management in DeFi, according exactly to your specifications, without you having to actively manage the entire thing. Now, of course, some listeners might think of it as just a saving of time and energy, right? Because 24/7 portfolio management in crypto is incredibly hard. There's a reason in general why traditional markets, which is often really annoying, don't trade on weekends and have trading hours. Afterwards, there's nothing going on because humans need to sleep. We've got this weird habit of doing that, this addiction to sleeping. But the thing is, in crypto, it doesn't exist, right? So you would need either 3 people working 8-hour shifts around the clock, or you automate the entire thing. But then on the other hand side, the great thing is we've had regulation all over the headlines recently. It's the only narrative right now in crypto, unfortunately. But a big part of most regulators' concerns is active portfolio management without the license. Is someone taking money from other people and then working with it in order to generate yield and promising to give it back? Because for that, in most places, in most jurisdictions, you would need a license. You'd be considered a portfolio manager. But with Spool, depending on your jurisdiction, you can cut out the discretion, because as soon as you set up a vault, you have no influence anymore because all the parameters have been set and self-executes. So Spool is also the first tool, we believe, that allows you to set up fully self-executing vaults without any human involvement, which from a regulatory perspective also makes things considerably easier.
Yeah, that's a much needed thing. And I really like the comparison that you did around kind of like traditional markets, being, what's it like a 7-hour day versus 24/7 on crypto, and how do you actually manage a portfolio? Coming back to, obviously the vaults themselves, are vaults predetermined in terms of the kind of investment that you can make in them, or the pair? So is it a paired investment? Is it just stable coins? What are the different vaults that you guys have? Are they predetermined vaults, or is it something that I can come in and decide on what it is that I want from a strategy point of view?
Yeah, that's the beauty, really. The Spool is exactly what you want it to be. You can set up exactly the vault you want to have. So if you go to app.spool.fi, you click create a Spool, then you can pick deposit currencies. Now Spool V1, which is currently live, you only have stablecoins for choice. But we are coming out with Spool version 2 in about 1 to 2 months. And there you will also have volatile assets. So you can set up a Spool vault based on, let's say, USDC, USDT, DAI, ETH, whatever really you want as deposit currency. And then you can farm across those. So you can even set up multi-asset vaults, like a vault with USDC and USDT in that, or USDT and DAI and whatever. And then the strategies that also farm across those different multi-asset strategies. So Spool vaults are really exactly what you want. You set them up, you pick all the strategies that you want to have exposure to. You can set up a ETH staking index, for example, which we have a launch partner that's doing it, Staking Rewards. They already went live with the communications around it. I think it's a really cool product because it's really an indexed fund, if you want, across the most popular, the biggest, the most interesting ETH staking products. So you've got proper diversification in the ETH staking space. And I think we all know, because we learned the hard way, that the biggest issue in crypto is black swan events tend to wipe you out completely. There's no backstop. There's either, your money is there or it's fucking gone and someone else has it and he has all of it. So you can eliminate a lot of that black swan risk by diversification, right? If you're properly diversified across non-related assets. So for example, even to a certain degree related, but from a tech risk perspective, if you're in Frax ETH, Rocket Pool ETH, and Lido ETH, if one of them has an issue, an exploit, in general, the others will not. So you have a max downside, a max drawdown in case of black swan event. And with Spool, you can easily set up such portfolios. You can set up broadly diversified portfolios across many different strategies and cut out and really manage the max downside in case of black swan event.
Nice. It almost seems like a no-brainer. It definitely does seem like a really good market fit. Simon, would it be possible to actually take a look at the protocol itself and then possibly the V2 stuff? I know that we chatted about this another time, but before this, but would you be keen to show us later on in the interview, just do a screen share and just show us around, kind of like shed some light in terms of how this works? And I mean, you guys have built this thing. In terms of version 1, just take us back to, when it started, what the thinking was behind that. And obviously the most important aspect is why version 2 and how did that evolution come about?
Yeah, it's, I think, the natural evolution, as you already used the word, of you come out with a product that was built for a specific market. And that specific market was the bull run market, basically, leading up to the beginning of the big collapses last year. We had, of course, at first the centralized lending crisis, if you want to call it like that, with 3 Arrows Capital, with then also the big DeFi players that weren't really DeFi collapsing, right, like Celsius, and with them drawing down a whole lot of other players. And then later on, we've had FTX, we've had the Alameda drama, but Spool was built for the market before all of that. Really liquid DeFi, lots and lots of yield farmers across many different strategies that were extremely inefficient in how they conducted their operations because they had to nonstop manage portfolios actively. They had massive gas costs, and Spool solves this entirely, right? Because Spool automatically reallocates, it automatically risk manages across all of your strategies, across your portfolios. But on the other hand side, it also takes away the pain of having very high gas costs for reallocation. Because we have this master Spool smart contract, which once a day on mainnet and on Arbitrum every 4 hours, basically batches all withdrawals, all deposits, and all reallocations, and therefore gets you the benefits of basically everyone who deposited into Spool interacting with it at the same time, interacting and transacting at the same time. So your own gas costs are cut by the amount of other users without your funds ever touching other users' funds, without any commingling, without any of those issues, without ever having exposure to other people's strategies. So this is massively gas efficient. Of course, there's still cost, but the DAO pays for that with the fees that the DAO takes, which are 10% performance fee and everything. So also a lot lower than most other players in the space. And this product was really built for bull market. Now we launched in April, right into the end of the bull market, and liquidity dried up really fast, right? When the big players, the big DeFi actors like an Alameda, all of a sudden all vanished and were up and gone. When you had 3Rs Capital, literally everyone who was kind of centralized collapsing. We realized that as long as also the macro trends continue and we don't get new impulses for funds flowing into high risk asset classes, which crypto is most likely one of the highest risk, and then going away from like ETH staking, maybe buying some Bitcoin, buy and hold, DeFi is even higher risk. DeFi is extremely high risk. The only way to get capital to flow into DeFi again is by offering proper portfolio management tools and by offering really solid product that players that were eyeing to get into DeFi need. So that's why we're building Spool now really with the learnings from the past year in a bear market, looking at the needs of players that are still in DeFi and are still considering getting into DeFi if they get the right tools.
So in terms of the kind of like the similarities that we can see in the DeFi space. I mean, obviously, the one thing that comes to light, and obviously just for absolute clarity's sake, Spool is not the same as Yearn, but everyone kind of like understands, if you've been in DeFi for a bit of time, you will have known what Yearn is and what Yearn did. Obviously not as popular, like you said, liquidity is no longer present like it was. How does the Yearn kind of like, I think Yearn was almost like, like a starting point. And it's like, okay, this is the potential that, DeFi allows us to do around strategies, around yield generation. How is Spool different to that? Or rather, how is Spool similar, but more importantly, how is Spool different?
I think that's a pretty good question. In many ways, Yearn has, as you said, really opened up gateways and paths for us to take in DeFi. It showed people what you could do. Yearn provides managed vaults, managed strategies that they're always trying to provide the best yield. They've certainly done a really good job at that for a very long time. They are very well liked within the community for a reason. They're generally also very nice guys. So they are kind of the North Star, or they are the one player that everyone looks to when it comes to vaults. They hear the word vaults and it's like, oh yeah, okay, that's what Yearn does, right? They provide vaults, you deposit, I send my funds there, I get yield, at some point I can withdraw. But Spool really is different in the way that Spool allows you to set up your own vaults. They can be managed, they can be non-managed, they can be completely non-discretionary. But the important thing is these vaults are exactly what you want them to be. You can set them up to fit your exact specifications and work on the parameters you set. So you can set up a vault that's almost identical to a Yearn vault if you want to, but you don't have to. You can also set up any other vault, right? You can set up, as I said earlier, an ETH staking only vault. You can set up any strategies included vault that you want. You can have a multi-asset strategy vault with Spool v2. And that's the main thing. Yearn gives you yield on predefined and managed vaults, while Spool allows you to set up any vault you want exactly to your own specifications and with lower fees.
Okay, sounds good. So, I mean, how do you see kind of like an ideal scenario, particularly in a bear market right now? Because at the moment, like coming back to the issue of, cash flow, liquidity, how do you guys navigate like what you're doing right versus what you're doing wrong from a strategy perspective? Is it really like, are you seeing like a varied strategies that are coming through? I mean, or is it just like, okay, well, everyone's just wanting to do like ETH USDC or just, USDT, USDC. I mean, what is playing out for you guys at the moment from a case study perspective? And is that kind of like an ideal strategy that you see, like one or two strategies, and that seems to be ideal? Or is it still very much a varied approach in terms of like vaults that you're seeing that are working really well at the moment?
I think DeFi is very much trend-based, right? Things come in waves, and then everyone is jumping on that wave. Like the Euler Finance, and we'll always have these. Like right now, it's LSDs, as you mentioned, and everyone's jumping on that. The idea with Spool V2 is that we're not building for one trend, because then you always have a very limited shelf life, and you already know that you're gonna have to build a whole new product every couple of months. But we are building the toolbox really that you can set up vaults for every trend, right? Because right now, yeah, absolutely, focus is on LSDs. Everyone is hot about that. Everyone wants the highest yield on ETH staking. We've got Eigenlayer and other approaches that, it always comes in waves. You first got some fundamentals that work and work and work, and you've got Lindy effect building up, like with Lido or with the Rocket Pool. And then people start going in with leverage. They start putting incentives on top to attract deposits. And then you've got things like Eigenlayer with like restaking, and it's basically rehypothecation of assets, right? Fractional reserve banking. So we are always living in light speeds financial markets trends, right? It took maybe, I don't know, it's 40, 50 years now for fractional reserve banking to come to a phase where it's no longer sustainable and everything looks very shaky and like it's collapsing. But in DeFi, we do stuff like that in like 3 months, right? We go from fundamentals like Lido working well to rehypothecation of your ETH and only paper ETH basically being there, and stuff like that in a couple of months. So yeah, that's the main point. There will always be new trends. Right now, it's definitely LSDs, and that's why I believe most of the users will come in with the Spool V2 launch. But I'm also fairly certain that in November, we probably won't be so hot on that anymore, and we will have something else that we're talking about. And Spool will be ready for that as well. That's the entire approach. There will not have to be a complete new product release. We won't have to say, we built everything new. There's a custom new landing page, a custom new dApp or whatever. No, it will just be all the tools you need to ride the next wave of innovation in DeFi, the same way you did the last ones.
That's a great answer. Do you honestly think that there is going to be a shelf life around LSDs in terms of the fact that there's such a small percentage that isn't being staked at the moment, and the potential of those yield generating strategies, which I think obviously Spool stand to benefit hugely? I mean, I do agree with you that come November, there will probably be maybe even 10 different things, because, the guys have decided to go back to work after their holiday in the summer in New York, and like something's going to come to the fore. Do you really think, I mean, obviously just separate to Spool, maybe an indirect strategy, but I mean, do you think that LSDs will kind of reach their high noon and then kind of like simmer down? Or, I mean, my feeling is, from my perspective, it almost seems like we're only getting started, but I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are around that.
No, I think there's two different things there, right? There's hype and people getting really excited about stuff, and then there's maybe market saturation. And I believe for market saturation, we still have a far way to go, because ETH staking, I believe, is an amazing fixed income product. You've got some exposure to a volatile asset, especially in current market conditions where we've got really expensive money. Prices are depressed. It feels like we're around capitulation. People stop caring about crypto. So I think it's really good. You're getting around 5%, plus you got the volatile asset that's at a very depressed price point at the moment. So I don't think we're anywhere near saturation, and probably also won't be by the end of the year. Maybe we're getting there sometime next year, end of next year. I don't know, maybe longer. But I certainly think that, crypto Twitter and the Telegram groups and Lobster DAO and so on, they will be hyped about something else probably in the next, in half a year.
Yeah, and we need to pay attention to when our friends tell us to buy Pepe at 500,000 market cap. I mean, obviously, it's like there is this. I mean, I think you described it really well and quite beautifully, actually. Like when you say, like, we're essentially traveling at light speeds. Like light speeds in terms of like the greater traditional finance perspective. And I've always said that we are we are essentially living in the future in so many ways because it works. It is so fast and work is so quick. But with that, obviously come the pitfalls, and it's coming back to, like version 2, and obviously you guys did the wise thing and you relooked at, we need to accommodate a bear market perspective. From a technical point of view, was there quite a lot that the guys and the dev team had to put in place in order to arrive at a version 2, or was it just kind of like more of the same, but we're approaching it in a different way?
No, it was really a complete rewrite. So it was everything.
A complete rewrite, really? Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Okay.
So, I mean, lines of code is generally not a good sign of quality, but it's certainly a sign of how much work and time and effort had to be put into. Spool v1 was the biggest project on ETH at the point of release, and Spool v2 is going to be the new biggest one because it's going to be the new most complex one. So we had first Trail of Bits audit the entire thing, and then we had Chain Security audit the entire thing. Now, Trail of Bits, at the time of starting, they doubled their team that was auditing it because they've never seen something with this complex and this many functions. So they did it free of charge, so kudos to them, but they completely underestimated the scope. So they had to double their team to audit the entire thing. It's really, everything is new. The way how things work is, of course, we've got the master spool smart contract, we've got the inner workings, the efficiency gains. Those are largely the same, even though they're rewritten. But otherwise, Spool v1 was a toolbox that was a bit narrow, as in it could only accept stable deposits, vaults could only be single asset, and the strategies that were compatible were also limited, especially by liquidity. Now, Spool v2 is completely different in that sense, where we've figured out and we've learned about where we were constrained with v1, and we opened that up. So we've got, of course, multi-asset vaults. We're able to integrate even illiquid strategies. Like we're thinking about, for example, Bifrost for v2, but there was huge amounts of slippage and not a lot of liquidity. So yields were cool, but good luck going in and out with large amounts of money. But Spool v2 can actually handle that because these vaults, even if one strategy is liquid, let's say you have 10K in one vault and you want to withdraw, and one strategy out of 5 is illiquid. With v1, we had the issue that the master spool smart contract would have tried to withdraw everything at the same time. Something would have choked and that would have stopped and it would not have been able to withdraw. You would have to manually withdraw your money from the individual strategies, which of course cost a lot of gas fees. With v2, we solved that by basically the master spool smart contract and also being able to say 4 out of 5 are fine. We withdraw the 4 out of 5. You can just manually withdraw the last one whenever it's liquid enough or with slippage. So, and that sounds minor, but it's actually a pretty big detail because it allows us to really integrate strategies that people want. But often the strategies people want are highly risky, highly liquid, and not around for more than maybe 2 or 3 months. But nonetheless, right, I'm a firm believer in the markets, and if people want something, then it's generally a good idea to give it to them.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think in terms of the Spool's current presence, it's Ethereum and Arbitrum. Is that correct? There's no. Okay, so let's just talk about, residency. I mean, obviously during a bull market, when you're paying $300 to do a transfer, or if you're collecting yield or whatever the case is, I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous. How I wish we had those days back, but obviously in many ways not, because you're just throwing money to the wind. Was Arbitrum a choice purely because the liquidity is mostly residing there? Not to say that Ethereum does not have liquidity. There is liquidity there. But is it also because of gas costs and costs around just in general? Was that part of the strategy as well?
Definitely. For Arbitrum, the idea was to have a almost sandbox playground where we could also move faster, deploy some strategies that are, where we could lower the requirements. As I said earlier, for Spool v1, we were a bit confined with which strategies we could work with. We would also audit every single strategy, and so integrations would take time. And often if you've got high yield strategies that people really want, by the time we develop an adapter, integrate, and audit the entire thing, it's like 1 or 2 months. And then the strategy would already be dead, exploited, rug pulled, the yield wouldn't be there anymore, incentives are out. So we wanted to really go to Arbitrum for, of course, the efficiency gains. That's why on Arbitrum, we do hard work every 4 hours instead of every 24 hours, because it's so much cheaper. So it's totally fine to do it more frequently. But also because people there are still trying around, right? They're still playing with things. There's still the feeling of openness to innovation, whereas DeFi on ETH is already more settled. It's already more established, and people expect things to work, right? And even if you're, let's say, a provider like Spool, right? We built the toolbox for you to set up vaults. You pick the strategies you want, and some of those strategies are higher risk than others. But still, if people deposit then into a Spool vault, they have exposure to one high-risk strategy. There's an exploit, the money is gone. They're not going to say, this one strategy from protocol XYZ, they lost my money. They're going to say, I put my money to a Spool vault, right? Spool lost my money. So we wanted that separately on Arbitrum, where people have a better understanding also what they're doing. Because if you get into DeFi, you bridge your funds to Arbitrum, and then you go interact with some Arbitrum protocols, you generally know a little bit what you're doing and a little bit how things work. So that's why we went.
So I think what would be a really interesting aspect to investigate is obviously partnerships that you are looking to do from a business development side of things. The partnerships that you do potentially allow for certain strategies, for certain approaches. Can you just talk us through, like in terms of the way that you like to approach things from a business development perspective? What do you look for, from a partner? Like, is it what they're doing? Is it like the value that's present? And how do you then interpret that? And how do you then incorporate that? Or does Spool incorporate into them? How is that whole dynamic? Can you describe it to us in as simple terms as possible?
It's a big question, right? But I'll try my best. So there's multiple sides, right? There's Spool building on top of others, and then there's others building on top of Spool. So it's maybe two sides with Spool in the middle. Now, if Spool builds on top of something else, that's mainly strategies, right? Like we're integrating a new strategy, we're integrating Lido or Frex, and then the beauty of most of DeFi is that permissionless, right? So it's not even so much about getting in touch with them, signing contracts, integrating, and having certainty about uptime, having certainty about development resources. No, it's not like that, right? We basically just integrate them, and we try to always get in touch with the devs in case our devs have any questions, and in general also for marketing outreach, right? When you partner, when you integrate, you want people to know that this strategy is now available via Spool. Both parties benefit because the underlying strategy gets funds routed to them, obviously, and they are more easily accessible for users. And for us, it's also nice because we can show our product is getting better. There's more tools available if you use it. On the other hand side, the, let's say, more work intense in general side is getting others to build on top of Spool, because there we need to show the value. Why would you use a tool set to set up vaults instead of depositing directly into individual strategies? Big arguments, of course, massive efficiency gains, automated portfolio management, risk management that you otherwise can't do on-chain. So that is there because everyone has limited resources, right? You can't talk to everyone. We're a small DAO with like around 25, 26 members. Our business development partnerships department has 3 people, me included. So you can't do a broad, spammy outreach and just be like the average KYC startup that probably everyone in crypto right now has in their inbox. That's just like, hey, we would like to talk about verification. No, you have to target exactly who you think could really benefit, and then spend a good amount of time explaining to them if they're already in crypto, then what the efficiency gains are, what the gains in governance benefits are. If they're not in crypto, then you need to explain to them why they should even do it, why Spool opens up the door really with our integrations, with, for example, our partnership with Fireblocks that allows you to securely interact with DeFi. And then there's plenty of players that are in crypto but not in DeFi, right? Like we've got exchange partners that don't have earnings products because they were afraid from a regulatory perspective, but also from a tech and from a management perspective. And that's where we see the key pain points. And if you've ever built a company, a startup, you know that you have to start with the pain points and solving those. If you figured that out, so we say we solve the technical side of things because we're easily integrated with the big custodians, so you can go through your Fireblocks accounts directly into Spool. That's also on the safety side, makes things a lot more trustworthy. We explain exactly how Spool works. We explain exactly how diversification helps decrease risk and how risk management works. But then also we have worked with top capital markets lawyers in Europe, with GSK. They're one of the top 3 capital markets law firms. If you look at Chambers ratings in Germany, which is generally one of the toughest jurisdictions to get things through. With a look at markets in crypto asset regulation, right, which just came into effect in Europe. So hopefully in a few years, we'll have a single digital asset market where you can easily offer your product to all European member states if you comply with it. Honestly, everyone's scared about it, but it's not that bad with a few regulations, like offering a small prospectus, for example, if you offer investment products. And small prospectus is really like 3 pages. Any company with like 5+ employees is able to come up with something like that. And we're working with exchanges already that are happy about us giving them the legal certainty, a certain degree of legal certainty about what they're doing and how the state of regulation and state of current judgments from courts is like. Then we're giving them the entire tech tool set we help them build. They basically just build the front end, plug it in, and they interact securely via custodians. So that's, again, one of the things we learned over the past year. In DeFi, there's a tendency to be very tech and dev heavy, where organizations are led often by developers, and that's cool. But there's a risk of being blind to the needs of the market and the needs of the customer. And while everyone is flushing cash and while everyone is swimming in gains and everything is going up anyways, that's fine. People will just try out new products because there's a potential of getting an airdrop. There's a potential of making high yields. But when money is really expensive, money is tight, and most tourists have left, then you really, really need to start looking at the pain points of customers. You have to understand what they're doing. You can't just build a product and people will try it because they're bored. No one is bored. Attention is really expensive in a bear market. There's almost none of it. So that's our approach there.
Wow, great! Another great answer, Simon. I think the holistic approach and being aware of, like you said, the pain points is critical, especially in this market. At the end of the day, protocols are defined by the lessons that they learn during this time. It either makes them or breaks them, right? And it's really cool to hear that, you guys have taken that mindful approach. And it's like, okay, well, let's relook, let's rethink. And clearly you guys have rebuilt. I didn't actually know that you guys wrote the code pretty much fresh and, let's approach this problem in a new way. A quick question for you around Omnichain and, the ability and the flexibility to be able to be cross-chain, when required. Was that something that was considered? Is that something on your roadmap for the future? What are your thoughts around that?
We definitely considered it. And I know that from a commercial and business side, I absolutely wanted it, right? And I was pushing our devs really hard for it. But the barriers right now are still too high. The risks are still too high. The way that Spool works also with reallocation, fully automated and very gas efficient, that just doesn't work. Let's say if we would do it cross-chain, let's say you have a vault with strategies on Arbitrum and strategies on mainnet, the rebalancing is a complete mess, and bridges are, as much as we wish they were, but they're not mature enough. We've got cool partners that we're already working with and hopefully making it work in the future, like a Lie.fi or even a Wido and others that are really doing great stuff in the cross-chain, Omnichain space. But right now, the way Spool works, right, we have customer security and the ability to withdraw funds whenever you want as very high priorities. Now, if you have funds across chains and a bridge doesn't work all of a sudden, or a bridge is, has waiting times, has queue times and so on, then it just breaks that promise. And therefore, we'll not have it with Spool V2 because the bridge situation is just not there yet.
Is there a possibility that there could be some kind of an integration with a protocol that is, for example, doing Omnichain successfully? Say, for example, is a layer 0 protocol and is managing to obviously move that liquidity around. Is that something that potentially could be suited and could be a fit, or is that also, like, from a technical level, is that still restrictive in terms of what you guys have as an expectation, particularly around security, which sounds like it is a security issue for you guys?
So that could work because as long as our entry and exit point is basically on one chain, let's say on Arbitrum, and whatever they're doing underneath is really their thing, as long as it's liquid enough so that users can get their funds at any point, right, without massive slippage, then it could be done from a technical side. Absolutely. It's just that Spool vaults themselves would not do that well with strategies across multiple chains. But if a protocol is, accepts deposits on mainnet and then does whatever the fuck with it, and then you also withdraw on mainnet, then that would absolutely be possible, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
that's on the bus.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking out loud around, liquidity provision just in the greater DeFi space, because I think, we've been chatting about like the challenges within a bear market. And the biggest challenge is obviously, eliminating the slippage, because, you want to have liquidity present in whatever it is that you're doing. And it's almost like, and I want to also chat about, the role that Spool can play within the LSD context. Because at the end of the day, the way that I view it is that we're concentrating liquidity cash in order to provision it in an efficient way where it is needed. So in the event that Spool is providing, this, essentially the way that I see it in my mind's eye is that it's a facility. It's a cash vault facility that you can access in the event that liquidity is needed. I'm putting my money there so that you can access it to do what you need to do. If I'm able to do that cross-chain, surely the efficiency of that liquidity increases and potentially my yields improve, provided obviously, the due diligence around security, whether it's layer 0, is in place. I mean, am I looking at it correctly in my mind's eye, or am I kind of like being too hypothetical?
No, I think you are right in a different market, right? Because if we look at how much liquidity there even is in DeFi across chains, it is very dry. But like the sea has completely dried up. There's most on mainnet. There's a bit on Arbitrum, and then there's like tiny bits on other layer 2s and on layer 0s. So in a market flush with cash, when the Fed stops hiking rates, and most European countries are in a recession. In the US, I'm not entirely sure right now, but once central banks start printing cash again in order to fight recessions, that is absolutely really hot and a cool thing, and it should work, I think. But we need basically the bull market back for that, right? We need liquidity, we need innovation and high yields across chains for that to make a compelling product.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'll agree with you on that. So we'll revisit this conversation during a bull, and then we'll chat about how effective the strategies are with Pepe link pairs, kind of thing. So, I mean, I joke, but don't be surprised if that is a strategy that comes to the fore at some point in time. In terms of your V2 rollout, you did mention that there's an expectation around the next month or two. What still needs to happen from this point onwards? Like, what does the roadmap look like for you guys?
So it's actually very straightforward. The two big audits with Trail of Bits and chain security are done, and everything that was flagged by them has been already fixed and worked on. So right now it's really polishing. It's about getting everything put together, right? Or like all the parts have been audited. Now everything needs to be put together. Now everything needs to be put into a working state, and front and back end need to be connected. So it's really that stuff. We are going to have different features rolled out over a period of time after the initial launch. So the way we're going to do it is we're going to first do a closed beta launch where our partners that are already working on products, that some of them already have the front end done, they already have waivers for their clients to agree or to terms and conditions ready, where they can integrate the smart contracts basically into their front end. And this is probably going to last about a month. In that time, we're going to fix quality of life issues. We're going to set up a proper documentation around the integration, because we get a lot of feedback in that time from our partners that are building. So we'll integrate all of that. We'll set up proper SDK in that time. And then we go live to the public with proper front end that's accessible for everyone. And then also with full SDK for the developers, so that they can easily integrate without having to manually request assistance from our devs, but with all the information hopefully there. And then we're going to roll out individual features over the next couple of months and individual new strategies. And then once we have, let's say, rough feature completeness, then we'll only focus on building new strategies and basically nothing else. So that's the rough process. So right now, for the closed beta launch, not much is missing. It's really more about polishing it. And then it's about learning as much as possible with our partners that understand how things work, so that afterwards users that don't understand how things work have an easy time.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to obviously revisit this conversation, particularly, I mean, what we really enjoy doing at Blockmates is kind of doing a check-in with protocols, later on. And it'll be really cool to see, how this has obviously progressed. I did see your text message that you sent me, obviously in StreamYard. So just for our listeners, when I chatted to Simon yesterday, he kind of like tentatively said that maybe we could take a look at, what V2 looks like. And I was kind of hoping that we could get like a first view for everyone to see, but apparently the guys are still doing some stuff with it. So next time we get you on, we'll definitely do, a screen share and just get a good sense of, how it all works. We're going to be releasing an article, I think, in terms of like we're doing a deep dive on Spool in the next couple of weeks. We'll be releasing it, and we'll obviously do a follow-up in terms of how to use the protocol as well. Because I think that's really important. I don't think there's enough of that kind of stuff happening in the space where, I don't know what your thoughts are around UX UI, but I think even with V1, I think you guys, it was actually a really, really easy and very practical way of actually executing and using, the protocol itself. Whereas obviously, if you've been in DeFi for longer than 2 years, you go back 2 years, like even a year and a half. I mean, how some of those UI UXs even were used is a miracle in itself, and it's really cool to see. I think one of the products of the bear market is that protocols have taken UI UX a lot more seriously. I think there's a lot that haven't, but I think for the most part, it's been a really like cool thing. Was there like a big conversation around like UI UX in V2, or was it like, okay, more of the same? Or was it like, okay, we need to rethink and redo based on our previous experience?
There was a really big conversation around it. We even onboarded a new UX designer just for that full time, and he's been working on that. And I think it looks absolutely amazing. You will never want to use V1 again after that. It looks so sleek. It provides you a really customized dashboard that is not only giving you all the information of wherever you have funds deployed, but it also gives you cool features like, for example, claim rewards, not for individual strategies, not even just for individual vaults, but if you have like 5 vaults with 10 strategies each, you can just press one button and claim rewards for all of those strategies and all of those vaults. And, that's also very gas optimized. So I personally think it looks like if Apple made a DeFi dApp. So it looks really sleek. In general, I think what you mentioned, if we look at the DeFi summer in 2020 and the first steps and their UX, it was people used them right because they wanted to, right? You really wanted to interact. You really wanted to put your money in there. So you found a way, but that obviously changed right now. People don't even want to interact with DeFi. Let's say most of the people that have left, they don't even want to look at DeFi really because they maybe lost money or whatever. So we believe that in times where you need to bring in new people manually, you need to reduce the barrier to entry as much as you can. Now, as established users and people that know how things work, they can always, if they want, they can directly interact with the smart contracts if they want to go all the way. Otherwise, the UX is also really straightforward. But for new users, it's not cryptic, right? Everything makes sense and everything clicks. And we've done proper testing, of course, with test and trial users of the UX to see how they react. Also with non-crypto people, even people working in fintechs, people working in startups. In general, yeah, techie people, but not native crypto people. So yeah, those are our thoughts, and we hope that people like it. But we'll find more around the time of the closed beta.
A little bit of a philosophical question for you. Obviously, the whole thing around what it is that crypto is doing is to invite kind of like the normies per se, to come into the space and do what's needed. What do you think the biggest barriers to entry are at the moment? Besides the bear market, let's forget about, the state of the market in general, because that would have been an easy answer and would have been dead on right. But I think, what do you think? In the past, we always said UI UX was like a big thing. And I think a lot of, like we said, like a lot of protocols have like accepted, listen, we've got to like up our game. We've got to find the right people, hire the right professionals to do this for us. And I've seen some really good looking protocols over the last 6 months, particularly like super cool, from DEXs to even yield strategy stuff, LSDs, like really the game's been upped. So I think that's one of the things. But what other barriers to entry do you think we are faced as a crypto native community in order to invite others in at the moment?
I think the process of understanding crypto actually did not become easier. I think it became harder. I don't know if you have that, but for example, my brother-in-law just recently asked me if I want to learn more about crypto and DeFi in general, where should I go, right? And I actually had a hard time pointing him at some publication or anything like Blockworks. They do some cool stuff. There's obviously some podcasts that are good, like Blockmates. But if you just go on YouTube and search for like crypto beginner, you're getting screwed, right? You're probably getting rid of all of your money within the next couple of weeks. And
correct.
Compare that to back then in the day, 2014, 15, maybe where many came in before the first ICO bubble, or even in 2017 when many people entered. It wasn't that overwhelming. If you looked for stuff, you still found like Lex from Consensus giving some courses at university. You found a lot of theory. You would just go and read the Ethereum white paper and understand kind of what unstoppable applications are. You would go to Ethereum Foundation and read about the future of ETH and so on, and kind of get a solid base fundamental understanding before you then jump into new stuff. Like then you have also a good comparison, right? If you, for example, I started with really getting into it with the ETH white paper back in 2014. That really got me, and I read the entire thing, and then I went onto the websites that were there, and I tried to understand more, and I started talking with friends. I went to meetups and shit. And on the meetups, it wasn't that many scammers, right? In meetups, there weren't like people running Ponzi's and shit. There were people who actually tried to build cool applications, the nerdy types, people building, fair gambling apps where it's basically just rolling a dice and then you either lose money or win money. And there is no casino, right? Because it's just a 50-50 basically. And you would get solid understanding. And then when someone comes and sells you, I don't know, hardware with crypto mining software installed at the really high price, you would be like, it doesn't make sense, right? It can't be efficient because you have a solid basis. Right now, I honestly don't know where to point people. You can point them to like one podcast or two, and maybe one publication or two. But if they go on Twitter, if they go on YouTube, they're either leaving immediately because they're like, okay, these are all scammers. I get really bad energy from these guys that are the most popular that I find first. Or they follow them and then have a really bad time after a while. Like, they get toxic tribalism first or or whatever. Mm-hmm. But it's only a matter of time before they feel betrayed and before they've lost money and before they realize they spent money on shit that doesn't help. And then they probably leave. And that's overall, I think, a big issue right now with crypto. Same, like with NFTs. NFTs have such a bad rep amongst artists, among internet people often, and we need to get rid of that. And the sad thing is, way to get rid of that is an extended bear, where like the tourists leave that were just here to make a quick grift buck. And with the next bull, hopefully good people are coming first, and then the grifters are coming later again.
I totally agree with you, and we're at Blockmates. We're in the process of eventually finalizing our new website, and we are going for quite a news approach, but it's going to be very different to the way that news has been broadcast, just in general, whether it's crypto or not. We're going to do it our way, and it's going to be very much a DeFi news orientated, primarily. We will do general stuff, but we're going to focus on DeFi, like what's Spool doing? Like, okay, cool, that's news, relevant stuff. And then with that, we're doing proper educational content that will be free, that will be really easy to understand. And then hopefully that will be like, oh, go to Blockmates. Because at the moment we've got the content there, but the flaw that or the mistake that we made is that we didn't actually set it up almost in a modular form, because that's what people essentially need, right? It's like, okay, I need to understand what crypto is. What is a wallet? Well, how do wallets work? Do I want to go for, like a self-custody wallet? Sure, makes sense. How do I do that? What are the best ways? So that's our responsibility. It's all fine and well going and, doing the big brain stuff. We've spoken about some big brain stuff today, but if we put this video in front of a normie, they're going to be like, strategies, vaults? What the fuck are you talking about, bro? Like, that just makes absolutely no sense. But if we tell them about what the value proposition is of crypto and how we are essentially fast tracking, this 50, 60-year-old legacy system that's essentially leopard crawling around the place, then there's a value proposition, and then people will come and play. So that's our responsibility. So hopefully in 3 to 6 months' time, I can send you a message and say, Simon, you can tell whoever asks you to go and check out what we've done, and then hopefully that'll help them. That's what we want. We really, at the end of the day, it's all fun and games and making money and the rest of it, but I think we've got to be giving something back, and it'll be really cool to be able to do that for new entrants. But yeah, I agree with you. That's, I didn't really think about it until you said, like, right now, it really is so complicated. Like, it is. Like, if you go on YouTube right now, you're going to get guys with their mouths wide open trying to sell you, like the shittiest shitcoin that ever was.
Yeah.
And we don't need that. That's not how we're going to get ahead here and do what we need to do. Anyways, thank you, Simon, for your time. We're almost at the top of the hour. It was really cool to chat to you, and I really enjoyed your passion for what it is that you guys are doing. It's very obvious. And yeah, I think you guys have built a great product. People speak very positively about it in the space. And good luck for V2. We'll get you back on when you guys have launched. Hopefully it will be in less than 2 months, and then give us a walkthrough. It'd be great.
No, very happy. It was a great talk. Really enjoyed it. And I think I wouldn't do anything that I don't care about, because otherwise I feel like I'm wasting my life away. Right? And then first of all, being in crypto and being in DeFi is, actually fixing things in the best way possible if you do it right, I think. Because the financial system is fundamentally broken. I think that's what got many of us into crypto in the first place. And in DeFi, we can really build structures that work if we do it properly. But yeah, I think that can bring a lot of joy. And that's why I'm still here after 8-9 years.
Preach it, brother. Preach it. That's exactly it. I love it. Cool. Look forward to chatting again. And once again, thanks for your time, Simon. And to listeners, viewers, please like and subscribe. We do appreciate it. It takes less than a second of your time. Cool. Thanks, Simon. Take care, everyone. We'll chat soon.